Okay, we're taking a typical function in factored form. And it's really a polynomial. If you multiply this out, what do you get? What kind of a function? You get a quadratic function, right? I mean, you know, on the test and on the major quiz, and people did well on it, said factor this thing. Now use the distributive law to multiply it back out. That should lock into the fact that something like that is going to give you a quadratic function, right? Okay? Okay, so where does the graph cross the x-axis? Well, people kind of sat there and stared at me. I know it's Tuesday, it's like Monday morning or something. Okay? Not quite engaged yet, but it's pretty obvious where it crosses the x-axis. On the x-axis, the y-coordinate is 0, right? Okay? So the graph of any function f of x, not just this one, crosses the x-axis when y, which is equal to f of x, equals 0. In other words, you have the equation f of x equals 0, right? So to find zeros, of the function, which are identified with the points where the graph crosses the x-axis for these reasons, okay? Solve f of x equals 0, right? Now, there are two ways that you can solve this equation. One is easier than the other. The one that isn't easier, but you could still do because you're getting very good with quadratic functions, is you go ahead and expand it using the distributive law, not superstition, okay? And use a quadratic formula on it, right? So you can find the zeros. You know, f of x equals 0, let's set this equal to 0, expand it, and use a quadratic formula. Okay? So you could solve f of x equals 0 by expanding and using the quadratic formula. Okay? Yeah, that'd be a little like beating a gnat with a sledgehammer, but it's easy enough. Okay? We're not going to do that. Okay? Can anybody just look at that expression and give me a value of x that makes f of x 0?
3.
Okay, so but continuing the narrative from down here, okay, x minus 3 times x plus 5 equals 0. And we'll say f of x and even y equals f of x. But, you know, there's the equation we got to look at, right? But clearly, this is equal to 0 if x equals 3, since x minus 3 is 0, and multiplying 0 by whatever x plus 5 is will still give us 0, right? Or do you just plug in 3, you get 0 times 8. Well, it's 0, right? Is there any other value of x that gives you 0?
-5.
Yeah. So that's really easy, right? X is 0, x is -5, and that's it. There can be no other value of x because any other value of x makes both of these things something besides 0. And when you multiply two numbers that aren't 0, what do you get? You get a number what aren't 0. To say it grammatically. Okay? Make sense? So I'll say and no other value of x since any other value results in the product of two non-zero numbers. That statement makes sense? What am I saying? Just what I said. If x isn't one of these numbers, then neither one of these is 0. So you got two non-zero numbers and you got the product of them. Okay? Try to digest that statement.